Hi everyone, thanks so much for opening this video. Today I want to talk about my personal journey of choosing a sperm donor for IVF and some of the decisions I had to make along the way. It's been quite the journey, very emotional, lots of decisions, but I'm hoping my experience, if you're on a similar path, will give you some guidance and maybe even a little bit of reassurance. So stay tuned. So when choosing a sperm donor, there's about 9 things you really need to consider. But one of the first things I had to decide was whether or not to use a known donor or an anonymous donor. Now let's start with known donor. Known donor would be a good friend who has said yes, I'll give you the sperm for you to create your family. I personally did receive offers like that. I even received offers from a man who said he would be willing to be the child's father in every sense of that word, right? A co-parent, if you want to call it that. But there is comfort in knowing who your child's father is, right? Or at least knowing who the donor is in case of any medical history or anything else that may come up. But then there's also a risk in this person being so close to the situation and not being the parent, or being close to the situation and being a parent that you actively have to deal with every day when you're making decisions as this child grows. And so ultimately I personally decided to go with an anonymous donor, right? Now an anonymous donor would be you going to one of the sperm banks and purchasing sperm. So all the legal stuff is already there. These persons have already given up their rights to these children, to any children made from their sperm, and so you know it's clean cut. Any child that comes from that is your child, and you will be solely responsible for that child. And that's ultimately the decision I made. So after you decided that you're going to go with known or anonymous donor, your real next step is getting into the medical stuff, right? So this would be your health background, his health background, your genetic screening, his genetic screening, right? And I would do this whether it's known or unknown, honestly. So once I decided on anonymous donor, I dove into the world of genetic screening, and let me tell you, it's like learning a new language, because once you go on these profiles and you start reading the profiles, other from that he has black curly hair and dark brown eyes, you're gonna see some medical information about the donor as well. And that's really the stuff that you want to look at, because whatever is in there, his medical history can also, especially genetics, can affect the child. And if both of you share the same genetic anomalies, then that can definitely affect the child. So you really want to look into that. Personally, I don't have any genetic testing done on myself. I really couldn't find anywhere here on the island that offered that. So when I decided to deep dive into the world of choosing a sperm donor, one of my top priorities was finding a donor who had advanced or expanded genetic testing done, right? And I even went one step further when I was searching, is to screen out everyone who did not have advanced genetic testing. That's 1. And 2, for everyone who did have advanced genetic testing, anyone who came up with an anomaly, I screened them out, right? So based on what they tested for, if that was all negative, then that donor was in my yes column. no matter education, race, or anything else, they were in my yes column once those genetics were clear based on what they had tested for. Now, in my family, there is a history of cancer, arthritis, and stroke. So then again, I did go through and search, because what happens, sometimes you have information on the parents, like if the parents had any of those ailments, or the grandparents had or died of any of those ailments. And so you can go through and look to see if his family has any history of those illnesses as well. And again, I did go through and screen out those, especially for the cancer and the stroke. This is going to take you a while. It took me maybe about 2 months of just looking through this information across, I think, 3 websites, 3 sperm bank websites, for me to just figure out, well, not for me to really understand what genetics testing was, what I needed to look for, and what I was comfortable in knowing and not knowing, right? So that's the second thing you have to look for. So one of the biggest stresses was that I learned about genetics and medical conditions that I had never heard about before in my life, and some of them are really scary, and some of them show up at the early stage in newborns, and it was a bit overwhelming at times to read this information, but I kept saying to myself, knowledge is power, and the more knowledge I have, the more I can make an educated guess on which one of these donors I was going to use. I wasn't just gonna base my decision on who he has cute baby pictures and oh, he's 6'1", so he's gonna be, my child is gonna be tall. I needed to make sure that I was making some very solid decisions in choosing this donor. Now, for me, when you're looking at donors, a good rule of thumb is to always choose donors with expanded genetic screening on his profile, right? And if you can find out any history of genetic anomalies that are in your gene before you start this process, it's a good way. That way you can definitely rule out anything. So for example, if there's sickle cell in your family line, then you can just go ahead and rule that one out and choose donors who do not have that trait, right? So it's really good that you have that information. I just didn't have access to that information when I was getting ready to buy sperm, so I had to just choose donors who were already clear of most of the common genetic anomalies that exist. Now, then you get to the fun part, really, scrolling through. Once you've made the decision about what genetics and whether you're going to use anonymous or known, then you really get to the fun part, which is scrolling through the donor profiles. That stage it's fascinating, it's surreal, just looking at profiles. It's like a weird online dating website, but the stakes are much higher because you're not just going on a random first date with this person, you know, you're trying to create a child that you are going to solely be responsible for. So even though the pictures are cute and there's fun facts and stuff, and they say, oh, he looks like Will Smith, and it gets you all excited, you really need to take it seriously and find someone who you're comfortable with choosing. Now for me, after I had ruled out genetics, I've ruled in genetics as my #1 priority when searching. The next thing I looked at was education. I generally chose the profiles with higher education and certain type of higher education. So for me personally, I'm more attracted to men who are interested in math, science, computers, construction, technology, versus men who like art and music and religion and languages and things like that, right? So I really tend to prefer the profiles that were of the technology, the science, the math, etc. Right? And then, like, after that, though, what I really liked on some of the websites, they have what's called a donor essay, basically, and some of it is handwritten by them and some of it is typed, but basically it just gives their personal thoughts on why they became a sperm donor, what they plan to do in the future, just their mindset. And I found it really helpful in reading that personal note in making my decision. Some of the websites also offer a recording of the donor's voice, and some also offer adult pictures, right? Not all of them, but some of them offer adult pictures as well. And I found that other than telling me he's 6'3" with dark curly hair and big brown eyes and he looks like Will Smith, I found that reading that personal information or listening to the audios, it's really what helped to cement my decision in choosing a donor. Another thing I should tell you is that once you're ready to make a decision, you should make the decision quickly, because the premium donors, or those that people would consider overall the better of the batch, the vials don't stay there forever, right? So they'll start up with maybe like 25 vials today, and then by tomorrow it's only 2 vials left. So you do have to make the decision quickly once you have decided to go this route, because if you spend too much time waiting or weighing the decision, by the time you decide that yes, I want this donor, and you wait 3 weeks, you're going to realize he has no vials left, and then you have to start the thought process all over again, trying to find another donor. Now, number 4, another important decision you have to make, and this one is going to really impact the future, is whether to use a open or closed donor. Now, with the open donor, this basically means that when your child turns 18, right, when they're of age, they would have the opportunity through the sperm bank to make contact with the donor, right, for at least one meeting or one phone conversation. The next option would be closed donor, and this is where there would be no contact whatsoever. This child will never know who that donor was, and you would never know who that donor was, right? Ultimately, I decided to go with open donor, right? Just because I wanted to ensure that if my child, when they turn 18, wants to find this person, wants to reach out, then at least there is an opportunity there for them to do that, right? I didn't want to, I'm already making so many decisions that's going to affect my life and this child's life. I felt that when the child turns 18, I wanted to leave that one decision available to them so that they can make it. That was important to me. I didn't want to say closed donor no and then not giving that child the opportunity in the future. Another thing that would be important would be cultural considerations, right? I'm Jamaican. I was born and raised in Jamaica, right? And yes, my child will be born here in Jamaica, so they're gonna have Jamaican upbringing, Jamaican heritage, etc. But the other half of their DNA, do I also want that to be Jamaican, right? So that they're fully immersed in this culture and being a Jamaican, right? That's something that I considered as well. When I first started, I did look first for Jamaican donors, right? On the international sites, it's limited. You will find a handful of them, but there's not much. And it does go fast. You mostly find African American men, right? With African roots, right? And some of them will have other Caribbean heritages, right? So yes, you may want to choose a Jamaican, but it's not that available out there. So you either have to make a consideration across the spectrum of Caribbean men that are available, or choose entirely outside of your race. It's really your choice, and whatever decision you make, you know you're gonna have to deal with that, right? Whether your child is fully Jamaican, you're gonna have to deal with that. Whether your child is half Asian, you're gonna have to deal with that as well, right? There's a whole culture that you're gonna have to deal with. Ultimately, I chose outside of my culture, outside of my race, and I ultimately made that decision because I was trying to find a donor that had the expanded genetic testing, and most of the Black men who had the expanded genetic testing had the sickle cell trait, right? And I'm not sure what the trait is on my side, so I was trying to stay away from that, right? Another thing I was trying to find though is someone who was good in math, science, or those things. And what I realized, a lot of the Caribbean men that were on the site were more into sports, arts, business people, lawyers, that type of career choices. And I definitely wanted someone who was more into sciences and math traits. Another big decision you have to make, and really you have to make this decision before you even start looking at sperm donor profiles, is your financial situation. Now, let's talk about IVF. IVF is expensive, right? Currently, IVF treatment in Jamaica is $12,000 US, right? Plus, if you're using purchased sperm, you have to add more money to that. You're looking at maybe another $3,000 to $5,000 US added to that price. Now, depending on the sites that you go to, a vial of sperm can cost you anywhere from $1,500 US. And while for IVF you may only need one vial of sperm, right? It's usually a good option to buy 2 vials of sperm, right? One as a backup, because you never know what's gonna happen. And just in case you want the opportunity, in case you have to go through the process of retrieving eggs more than once. Some women go through 6 egg retrievals to be able to create enough embryos to create their families. You may want to have the extra vials of sperm on hand to do that, right? For me, because I bought sperm from overseas, it also had to be stored in a cryo tank and shipped to Jamaica. So I did spend an extra $1,000 to put it in the cryo tank and then have it shipped to Jamaica, right? I'll talk about the Hugh Winter fertility unit process in a bit, but basically you add maybe another $1,000 to that cost, right? Next, you're gonna need support and guidance, right? And what I've realized on this journey is the more you talk about it, the more support and guidance you get. If you don't talk about it, you're not going to get support and guidance, right? But while you're getting that support and guidance, there's also some negative feedback and negative energies you're going to receive, right? So you have to be mature in your thinking. You have to be mature in understanding what you're trying to achieve, right? And you have to be mature enough to explain what you're doing to those who just don't know, right? But want to be helpful, right? So when I first started this, a good sounding board to talk to was my mom, right? My mom has always been encouraging me to do that, and she's a good listener, so I can always talk to her about what I'm going through, right? Another person to talk to would be your doctor, right? Doctor knows what you're going through, right? They're helping you with this process, so you have to be brave enough to ask those uncomfortable questions about buying sperm, using sperm that from a man you don't know, because as much as I'm now comfortable with the idea, it took me a while to get there, and I realized that it was through my family, my friends, even people that through my mom's channel on YouTube just encouraging me and me continuously talking about it have gotten me comfortably enough to be able to share this information with you now. So find a support group, find a good doctor, right? And have friends and family around you who want to support and encourage your journey of using donor sperm. So making that final decision, right? So after you've done your research, expanded genetic testing, anonymous or known donor, when you've decided what level of education this sperm donor should have, what race, what cultural background you should be, once you decide that you've had enough money to make this purchase, you now need to make the decision. So after a few weeks of researching, some soul searching as well, I finally got my list down to about 5 donors, and then I narrowed it down to 3 donors, and then I did what you do to make any important decision in your life, and I went eeny, meeny, miny, mo, catch a puppy by his tail, if we ever let it go, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, and I hit purchase, right? Let's try not to overthink it anymore. Now the final step would be working with your fertility clinic. My fertility clinic is Winter Fertility Unit. And by this time, you need to know to purchase its sperm. You'd have had a relationship with them. So at Hugh Winter, the doctor there will give you a list of sperm banks that they are aligned with, right? That they have a relationship with. And it's basically those sperm banks that you would go to and scroll through the list and make a decision on which sperm to purchase and how many vials of it you're purchasing, right? Then you would contact Hugh Winter about your decision, right? You'll give them your, I think it was the purchase receipt and the donor profile, right? And then they will make arrangements for the customs, right? And you make a payment to Hugh Winter, which is their processing fee, etc. All right. Once that's done, they will deal with the sperm bank will deal with shipping it to Jamaica. Hugh Winter will deal with the customs and collecting and storing it for you for when you're ready to use it. And then your cry tag that the sperm came in is then sent back to the fertility clinic, right? But that process is simple. Trust me, it's all the decisions that you have to make prior to about which sperm to select is the hardest part of the decision making, right? All I want you to remember is if you're on this path as well, do your research. No choice is perfect. Choose what is right for you and trust yourself, right? And don't be afraid to ask for support when you need it. You've got this. So thanks for letting me share my story. I wish you all the best on your journey, wherever it may take you. Bye.